Margaret sat by the window that evening, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple. At 59, she had settled into a life of quiet contentment, a predictable routine that revolved around her cozy home, a few cherished friends, and the occasional visit from her grown children. Life had found its rhythm, a peaceful melody of familiar moments. Yet, deep down, there was a quiet loneliness that she couldn't quite shake, a presence that lingered in the quiet spaces of her days. She wasn't expecting any visitors that night. So when the doorbell rang, the sudden chime startled her. Frowning, she smoothed the wrinkles on her cardigan and made her way to the door. When she opened it, a young delivery boy stood on her doorstep, holding a small package in his hands. He couldn't have been older than his early 20s, with an easy, bright smile that seemed almost out of place in the quiet hush of her world. "Delivery for Margaret Collins?" he asked, his voice cheerful. Margaret's brow furrowed. She hadn't ordered anything. "Are you sure this is for me?" she asked hesitantly, eyeing the package. The boy nodded confidently. "Yes, ma'am. Your name and address are right here." Margaret took the small box from his hands, an uneasy feeling creeping into her chest. Something about this moment didn't add up. There was no sender's name, no indication of where it had come from. Before she could ask any more questions, the delivery boy gave her a knowing smile and said, "Enjoy your surprise." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Margaret standing in the doorway, staring down at the mysterious package. Her heart pounded slightly as 100 thoughts raced through her mind. Who had sent it? And more importantly, why? Little did she know, this unexpected delivery was about to change everything. Margaret stood there for a long moment, the weight of the small box in her hands growing heavier by the second. The street outside was quiet. The delivery boy had already disappeared into the fading twilight. A cool breeze whispered through the trees, but she barely noticed. Something about this felt wrong. She stepped back inside, locking the door behind her, and carried the package to the kitchen table. Slowly she turned it over in her hands, searching for any clue about the sender. No return address, no markings. Just her name and address, as if it had simply appeared out of nowhere. Had one of her children sent it? A friend? She couldn't recall mentioning needing anything. Carefully she peeled back the tape and lifted the lid. Inside was a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Jewelry, a gift. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, revealing a delicate gold bracelet. The design was intricate, almost vintage, with tiny engravings along the band. It was beautiful, but completely unfamiliar. She had never seen it before, nor could she think of anyone who would send her something so elegant without a note. Margaret's mind raced with possibilities. Was this a mistake? Or was someone trying to send her a message? She picked up her phone, scrolling through her recent messages, searching for any clue that might explain this. No texts from her children about a surprise, no emails with a shipping confirmation. Nothing. Just as she set the phone down, a knock at the door made her jump. Her heart pounded. It was late, too late for another delivery. Slowly, she made her way to the door, peering through the peephole. The same young delivery boy stood there, hands in his pockets, looking strangely expectant. Margaret hesitated before opening the door. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice steady but cautious. The boy smiled slightly. "I just wanted to make sure you got it," he said. Then, after a brief pause, he added, "And to see if you remember." Margaret's stomach twisted. "Remember?" she echoed, gripping the bracelet tightly in her palm. The boy tilted his head, watching her carefully. "Yes. Do you?" A shiver ran down her spine. She swallowed hard, keeping her voice even. "I don't understand. What am I supposed to remember?" The boy let out a small breath, as if he had expected that response. "It's okay," he said softly. "I figured you might not, but this isn't the first time we've met." Margaret's mind raced. She was certain she had never seen him before, at least not in a way that stood out. He was young, probably in his early 20s, with a familiar face, but nothing she could place. Had he been around the neighborhood before? Had she passed him at the grocery store, seen him working at a cafe? She shook her head. "I think you have the wrong person." The boy gave a sad smile, then nodded toward the bracelet. "That belonged to my mother," he said quietly. "She wanted you to have it." Margaret's breath caught. A strange chill ran down her spine. "Your mother," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, tapping on the screen before turning it toward her. A picture of a woman appeared, a younger woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Margaret's heart nearly stopped. She recognized her. It had been decades ago, but she could never forget. A time in her life she had tried to move past, a decision she had buried deep, never speaking about it again. The woman in the picture had once been a close friend, someone Margaret had cared for deeply, until circumstances had torn them apart. Her hands trembled as she slowly lifted her gaze back to the boy. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice barely holding together. "My mother always knew where you were," he said, watching her carefully. "She just never reached out. But before she passed, she told me everything, about you, about the past, and she made me promise that I would find you." Margaret felt the walls of her world closing in, the weight of years pressing against her chest. She had thought that chapter of her life was over, but standing here, staring into the eyes of the boy in front of her, she realized her past was not done with her yet. Then, as she tried to form a response, another knock echoed against the door. Her blood ran cold. The knock was deliberate, familiar, and it sent a chill straight through her bones. Slowly she set the photograph down and walked toward the door, every step feeling heavier than the last. When she reached for the handle, her hands trembled. As she pulled the door open, her breath caught in her throat. Standing there, after all these years, was the one person she never expected to see again, the person she had spent a lifetime trying to forget. And in that moment, Margaret realized that the past hadn't just come knocking, it had broken down the door. Margaret exhaled a shaky breath, feeling the weight of decades settle over her like a heavy cloak. She had spent so long running, convincing herself that the past was best left buried. But standing here, in the quiet of her home, facing both the son she had never known and the man she had once loved, she realized something. Perhaps she had been wrong. The boy, her son, looked between them, his expression a storm of emotions, confusion, anger, longing. He had every right to those feelings. Margaret knew that no words could undo what had already been done. But maybe, just maybe, words weren't what was needed right now. So instead, she did the only thing that felt right. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and took his hand in hers. He flinched slightly but didn't pull away. A silent understanding passed between them. There was pain, yes, but there was also possibility. His father, the man she had once loved, watched with quiet eyes, as if knowing this moment wasn't his to interfere with. He had searched for years, hoping to bridge a divide that Margaret had once thought impossible to cross. And now, standing at the edge of something new, she realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Maybe the past had knocked on her door, refusing to be ignored. But the future, it was waiting, and for the first time in a long, long time, Margaret was ready to step forward and meet it. As the three of them stood there, the weight of old wounds hanging in the air, Margaret made a choice. She wasn't going to run anymore. She was going to stay. And that, she thought, was the first step towards something she never thought she'd have again: hope.